Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, or morning, depending on where you are. My name is Austin Clark. I'm the host of the Multiply You podcast and owner of Moxie Pest Control of Arizona. I've got a big smile on my face. Most of the time I do, but I've especially got a big one today because we have such a fantastic guest that you all are going to want to lean in and pay very, very careful and close attention. I'm very excited to be able to introduce her here in a moment. We love to have guests on that have been there, done that. And this particular guest is no exception to that. She certainly has. This episode, as they all are, it's brought to you by Moxie Pest Control. In Phoenix, we are growing like crazy, and all throughout the country and the 35 plus locations that we've got, we are growing. We feel very fortunate and very blessed to be able to experience some of that. Part of the way that we've been growing in the last few years has been via acquisitions. And so if you are a listener or you know someone that needs to be listening that has a pest control company, we would love to get in contact with them. There are people that enter the market every single day and exit the market every single day. And if they are a residential general pest control customer or company rather, we would certainly love to get in contact with them. They can call me on my cell or text me. It's 480-254-9730, or they can email me directly at aclark@moxiepestcontrol.com. It's really my honor to be able to introduce our guest today, Ellen Rohr. I met her for the first time probably about a year ago at a convention. I think it was the Pantheon or the Service Titan convention. And a friend of mine, a mutual friend, I guess, turned me on to a lot of the material that she has online and on YouTube. And I just thought, if I had 1/10 of Ellen's energy, I would be able to get a lot more accomplished. She is just wonderful. Ellen nearly sank her husband's plumbing company. It seems like lots of money was moving through the company, but at the end of the month, there was never any money left. With the help of great mentors, Ellen figured out how to fix and grow successful businesses. She teaches business planning and financial literacy, helping contractors make business simpler and more profitable. Now she is an owner and president of Zoom Drain Franchise LLC, a new franchise concept with 20 plus locations across the country. Ellen is the author of 4 unfussy business books: Where Did the Money Go? How Much Should I Charge? The Bare Bones Biz Plan, and The Weekend Biz Plan. She also hosts a regular podcast, Behind the Wall, for PHCPPPros.com and Unclogged, a Zoom Drain podcast. Ellen, thank you so much for being on the show today. Welcome, and how are you doing?
Well, I'm fangirling. I am a big fan of what you're doing, and I loved how you opened the show with a request. Hey, if you're interested in talking about acquisitions, that's how we're growing. It's my favorite way to grow. It's what all the big kids do, and anybody can play. I love that you open the show like that. So I'm going to learn a lot from you. I'm happy to share, what I know, and I'm old, so I've got a lot of experience now. So I'm happy to share the best of what I've learned, and I will be learning from you too today, my friend. So thanks, Austin, for having me on that call.
No, thank you, Ellen. So the first thing is we kind of dive right on in. One of the things that we talked about before we kind of hit record is kind of one of your stump speeches or things that you regularly go to, and that is financial literacy. And I can say, unfortunately, learning from learning the hard way or from doing it the wrong way or losing a whole bunch of money, that was not when I started in business, that was not a forte of mine. And when you talk about the different financial tools that, and not just financial tools that are available, but your financials, your profit and loss, your balance sheet, all of those sorts of things. Then when you put taxes on top of that, then when you have years when you're growing a lot and not growing a lot, and then there's these things called employee taxes. What the heck is employee taxes or payroll taxes? Anyway, I'm excited to speak for a moment and kind of start out that way. when you either are lecturing or training or mentoring, or maybe there's even a painful experience personally that you had earlier on, like me, I learned the hard way. And so it takes me 2 or 3 or 10 times to be able to learn to not touch the stove. Why is this so important to you? And what are some of perhaps the most common mistakes that you see business owners making when it comes to their financial literacy?
Oh, for sure. I touched the hot stove. I mean, once upon a time, I jumped in to work with my husband, the plumber. I met a guy named Hot Rod, so I married him, and he's a plumber. And I ended up working in the family business with him, and I thought it was a good idea. I had a lot of experience. I had a lot of jobs. I even had looked at some financial reports. I had a degree in business. I thought I knew what I was doing, and then I jumped into Hot Rod's business and I inherited a set of books that were messy. So they were wrong. There's negatives, there were all sorts of goofy words and things didn't add up. And so I'm looking at this hot mess and I'm like, I don't know how to make sense of this. I really don't know what I'm doing. And it was really humbling. And the worst part was I'm creative. I have no attention span. I'm self-diagnosed as dyslexic. I'm old enough that I didn't use words like that when I was a kid, but I don't think in very linear ways. So I was resentful that I had to figure this out. But we were broke. We didn't have any money. Money would come in, like I said in the bio there, money would come into the company. There was never any money left. And we did so much damage to our relationship. I would say to Hot Rod, we don't have enough money. And he would hear it as, I'm not working hard enough. I'm not good enough. And it just creates all this stress. And I can just feel the energy of that. I am not alone in having lived that mom pop life or, family business life where things just get really personal and really bad. And that's where I was. And then luckily I met a mentor. I like mentioning him, Frank Blau. He's a good old union contractor from Milwaukee who I met in the pages of a trade magazine. I wrote him a letter. I read his article called How Much Should a Contractor Charge? I wrote him a letter and said, please help me. And he called me up and he told me where my head was. It was in a dark place because in this letter, I told him all the reasons why I couldn't change. I couldn't do what he's suggesting. You don't understand. I'm creative. I don't want to do it. All this nonsense. You do what you love and the money will fall. I fell for every lie that you can hold on to avoid learning basic finance. And here's what I know, like I know. If it's your business, you got to know. If you don't want to know, go work for somebody else. But if you're going to own a business, it's your responsibility to be a good steward. And I wasn't. So I'm not judging. It is with no judgment, only love that I share with you today, Austin. But what happened is I was fortunate enough to have this man grab me by the chin and say, you know what, you might as well sell your company or abandon it, but you're going to sink it and take your team members with you unless you figure this out. And I didn't have the money to pay somebody else to do it. So I sat down and learned how to read a balance sheet and a profit and loss. And my friend, the mentor, Frank, showed me how to read financials using his financials. He sent them over to me on those old fax machines that made your hands greasy black. Once upon a time, those rolls of paper. He would call me on the phone and send the stuff on the fax, and I would just go with a ruler line by line, and he taught me how to read and use a balance sheet. And it changed everything for me because after I quit fussing and complaining and saying it's not my job and I don't want to do it and all that, and I just sat down and learned it, it was fun and not that hard, kind of like a puzzle. What goes up must come down. For every action, there's a reaction. Assets equals liabilities plus equity. It's an equation. It's not that complicated, even for me. So once I figured it out, I thought, well, there's no excuse that anyone can't figure this out. So I couldn't believe how many people were like me and didn't know it. So everybody's winging it. We're all following each other off the cliff. We're all calling each other and asking how much you charge and I charge, and nobody's charging the right price, and we're all losing money. So, I mean, you're relating to all this. So,
Yeah.
My career really started there. And as I started to see the light that if you're writing things down, I always say that if you're going to write something down today, write this down. You've got to charge more than it costs. But if you don't know how much it costs, you don't know how much to charge. And it doesn't matter what other people in your marketplace are charging or doing. It's up to you to figure out the money and then get good at marketing and selling and operations so that you can be a premium price provider and get people to still say, oh, yes, Austin, Moxie, they're expensive, but it's so worth it. They show up clean, sober, on time, dressed right. They use the checklist. It's worth it. So that, I mean, that in a nutshell was my journey. I figured out how to keep track of the money and what the mathematics were. And then from there, I set out to figure out the operational things I would have to do to make good on a premium price promise. Because unless you're premium price, I don't know how you're going to survive. Unless you're Walmart, right? If you're Walmart, you could maybe do it. But even the biggest companies I know in the trades, they're premium price providers. The home service companies that have had 100 million, 200 million, 300 million in sales are premium price providers in every market they're in because it's pricey to do what we do. So again, not to beat anybody up here, hopefully just to encourage, if you could take a deep breath and find someone who will sit elbow to elbow with you. I mean, I wrote the books, Where Did the Money Go? How much should I charge? Because I would have given my right arm for that book, Where Did the Money Go? It explains what a balance sheet is, what a profit and loss is, and it starts from scratch, transaction by transaction, and follows the money. It's really helpful. And I would have benefited from that information. So I felt kind of like I had to put it out there once I discovered it. But that, that was a long time ago. And as we were talking before we got on the phone, Austin, now in our business, across the empire, we're at about 40 million in sales. In the franchising company owned locations we have much bigger dreams. We're just getting started. I'd like to be 10 times that big. So we're, starting to really escalate and ramp up. And we got investors this year at Zoom Drain. And one of the things I was kind of on alert for is my basic understanding of the money, the balance sheet, the profit and loss, charge more than it costs, focus on profits and cash, charge more than it costs, make a profit and take it in cash. That's what I focus on when it comes to the numbers. It's not complicated, but I was wondering, as we got involved in more high finance, what am I missing? Well, as you get more money, you have to care for it. There's tax accountants. There is some strategy that you're going to want to find some experts in your life to help you maintain your wealth as you create it. But you create wealth by charging more than it costs and taking it in cash. And every hip company, every big consolidation or valuation is ultimately based on profits and cash. So the really good news is once you learn these basics, they'll take you as far as you want to go in business. Isn't that exciting?
Yes. And I'm just shaking my head up and down.
I can see I've got to stop talking for a minute. What's coming up for you with this conversation?
So first of all, I was wondering if you were following me around in bushes for the first 10 years of my career, watching all of the mistakes that I was making. I feel like every example that you use, I thought, wow, I made that mistake, or wow, I did that, or didn't do that. But I love what I heard from what you said is, one, get your finances right first. There's a variety of different ways that you can do that. First is probably you need to know what the actual cost of your service or good or whatever is, and that needs to include taxes. You're not paying those. That needs to include taxes. And then you went and you mastered operations second. And I love that you talk about premium pricing. And sometimes contractors will get on the phone with one another. Hey, what are you charging? Or they'll just call their competitors. Hey, find out what they're charging. And that is not a great strategy. It really, really, really isn't. It is as simple as, really, it's a formula. What do you want your net income to be? And then you can kind of reverse engineer it from there. And that will tell you all the way back through, if you want your net income to be 5%, 10%, 20%, then that means if your cost of goods sold are this and you kind of reverse engineer it, then you can go and look to see what you need to be charging. It really is that simple. And you see very, 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 very few, Walmart is the example that you used, low cost providers out there. And I believe the reason that you see that is because you have to count on tremendous amounts of volume, which most companies aren't incredible at, to be able to drive prices down so that you get all of that traffic. And so, as it relates to premium pricing, Milton Friedman, his quote just kind of popped into my mind. He's a famed economist that everyone is probably really familiar with. He stated that the purpose of business was to increase its profits for its shareholders. And so shareholders are the employee, shareholders are the owner of the company, shareholders are the board. And what I would add to that is that responsible companies are extremely profitable companies that are then taking that profit. Sure, they're putting some of it in their pocket, but the large majority, they are turning that right back around and investing it in their employees, in their equipment, in their technology. And if you're a home service provider or you're in the trades and you're still riding a horse from job to job to job, there's better ways out there to travel. Go buy a vehicle. You know what I mean? A horse might even be more expensive than a car. I don't know, with all of the maintenance and all of the things that go on. But you cannot. I think it's extremely difficult to do something great and big that like you're doing, Ellen, and be the low cost provider or the cheapest in the market. And I've played that game before. And let me tell you from experience, that is not fun. You deal with a whole slew of different issues and problems, and the lack of cash is only the start of those problems. You're chasing payments down. There's a whole variety of problems that come along with that. And so I love that you love to talk about money, and I love that you're very transparent about it, because money, and specifically profit, is the lifeblood of any company, to be able to keep it going and to have it continue to grow. And anyway, those were some of my thoughts.
Well, we related right away. The first time we talked, we had a connection, and it's part of the shared history. So it's with a lot of humility. Again, I'm not being judgy. I'm just being, I'm trying to be of service, because the faster you figure it out, the more heartbreak you can avoid when it comes to your team members, your family. They're counting on you. That's what I mean about the stewardship. If you're going to hang up your shingle, it's not optional. You have to figure out the money, or you're going to be you're going to be a poor steward, and people are counting on you. So you might then decide, you know what, I don't want to do that. I'd rather work for someone, which brings us back to your opening ask. If someone is in business and they might not really love it, we might be able to partner up and do better. There's no, not everybody wants to be a business owner, and not everybody wants to be a business owner all the time. You might even come to the party at Zoom Drain or at Moxie and say, someday I want to own my own business, to which I would reply at Zoom, well, we're going to teach you how to do that. Right. And you just lit up like,
Yeah,
I'm going to teach you everything I got, because if I play this game right, I just have to create a bigger and bigger game. One of the reasons we franchised is to create careers, not just jobs, at Zoom Drain. We have some very capable people there now who are definitely skilled enough and smart enough to go start their own businesses. So we are challenged all the time. What kind of game can we create that they'll stay, that they'll help us grow together? But if they want to go start their own business, don't they have the right to do that? Sure do. And that would give me, and you know that too. But if they don't want to, they could come work for us. And that's the same offer you're making too, that we could work together and perhaps put our align our missions and our visions and move forward together. And they don't have to be the owner, or they could be, I don't know what you offer in terms of your relationships, but perhaps it could be less pressure, less all of it on me, and that you would have someone within the company to mentor you as you go and grow to another location or continue to expand. But the exciting things in days like this is, in my long career, never before have we been seeing so much wealth created in the trades. So if you are willing, if you really want to be your own boss, if you want to be the boss, own the company. And if you are willing to, get smart enough when it comes to the financials, put a budget together, get premium price, keep track of the money, look at the financials at least once a week as you grow. You could sell your company someday for profits you haven't even created. That's what selling your company at a multiple of earnings is about. That a buyer might say, wow, you've created something pretty cool here. I'll buy it and I'll pay you for profits you haven't even made yet. How about that? Now, that didn't used to happen in the trades. People just died and the company died with them, or their son or daughter didn't want it, and then it withers on the vine, or 3 generations in, there's just too many family members and no one has kept up with the times. So, the opportunity for creating wealth gets diminished. So, the encouragement is the word of the day, I guess. The encouragement here is, if you fix it, you might be able to sell it for more than the sum of the parts. Or you might partner with someone with whom now you can go even bigger, faster. That's what we did as we took on investors. That's the idea, is that we can now partner up, have a smaller piece of a much bigger pie, and then I'm going to continue to grow. But these are games that did not exist in the trades, that the trades are looking so sweet to investors right now, given pandemic and recession and all sorts of other influences that have caused other business models to wobble. The trades are just marching strong,
going
right
through
now.
the roof. They're
Oh
going
my
crazy.
gosh, isn't it
Yeah.
crazy? It's so good. It's so exciting. So you get the money figured out. Like you said, I call that getting to a known financial position. And then you look at, okay, well, what would we have to do? Probably, I don't think I've ever not recommended this. So I always recommend that you're gonna have to raise your prices, because you said be sure to include taxes. Most people forget taxes, so that's why you said it. Most people forget to pay themselves. Most people are trying to get away with paying their guys too little, right? They buy nice trucks, buy nice tools, buy nice equipment and uniforms and insurance, and all of that stuff costs money, and your customer has to pay for all of it. They have to pay for your mistakes. They have to pay for you to train people, right? So before you know it, as you add up all these costs of doing business, you're going to be a premium price provider if your prices are going to cover all your costs to your desired amount of profit. And so when you get there, that's when you start thinking, oh, how am I going to be better? How are people going to say yes to me in spite of me being a premium price provider in a world where there's going to be a lot of poverty-driven competitors? So when you got to that point, Austin, what are some things that you did to raise your standard, to add value to the customer experience, knowing you were going to have to be premium price? What are the things that you did operationally to deserve it?
Great question. And I'm so glad that you asked that. We, in our journeys, in our past, may have been flip-flopped. I think that I got our finances right after we had some of the operational things in place. I think the number one thing that people need to consider is, who is it that you want to be in the marketplace?
So
Right
good.
now, yeah, who do you want to be in the marketplace? Do you want to be Walmart? There's no problem with that, but that's a different strategy than being Wegmans or AJ Fine Foods, or depending on where you are in the country, that higher end grocer or grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we're talking about vehicles, a Ford Fiat costs a lot less than a Lexus or a BMW, or even a supercar like a Bugatti or a Lamborghini. And it is expected that if you're going to buy a Lexus or a BMW, that you will spend much more money than if you go and buy a Toyota Corolla. And Toyota Corollas are great. A lot of our fleet for a long time was Toyota, and they run great, and they run forever, and they're economical.
They do.
And the Japanese are better
I have
than
a
us.
Toyota.
There you go. There you go. And so, ask yourself, who do I want to be in the marketplace? And then, like, hold true to that. Create your spreadsheets, have a really specific vision that you can cling to and look to and determine who you're going to be. And then what types of service or what service level is associated with that premium brand. For example, if you call, if you're priced 20% or 30% above the competition, is it okay to have a client call you and for you to have them wait a week for you to service them? No, absolutely not. And so if you're going to be the premium provider, you really ought to think about same day or next day service. If you're going
So
to be the
good.
premium provider, you need to have good vehicles on the road. You need to have great equipment, but and even more than that, you need to have incredible men and women in those vehicles that know what they're doing. I love that you said that the customer pays for everything, including your mistakes. And so let's make things less expensive for the customer by making less mistakes. How do we do that? Well, we have the right equipment, we have the right tools, and we've got people that are expert, that are trained, that know how to do the job that our prospective clients are calling for us to be able to do, and problems that they're calling for us to be able to solve for them, or for them rather. Those are some of my thoughts or tidbits as it relates to operations. But your path was your finances got in order first and then operations, and so then you got some of your vehicles right. Do you see a
Well,
lot of
the
contracts?
first thing we
Go ahead.
did, I bought shirts for the guys.
Okay.
Like, I mean, like, the trades, the bar is pretty low, and we were a hot mess. So the first thing I did was buy shirts, and I love telling this story. One of our guys used to wear a shirt to work under my employment that said, "Kill them all, let God sort them out." So we got nice shirts. I
The
mean, like,
bar is low. It is
the
not
bar is
difficult in the
so low.
trades way back when or
No.
today to stand out. I mean, if you show up on time and deliver what you said you're going to deliver, you have won. And you have shirts that don't say what your employee shirt said, you're going to be doing fine, and you fix that
I
really
know.
quickly.
Well, that's the clean, sober. So we drug test on time, huge, dressed right, just look good, and use a checklist. That means you've got systems. Clean, sober, on time, dressed right, and use a checklist. You can charge 5 times, 10 times what your competition charges because chances are good they don't do any of those things. Now, and there are really nice, really good people in the trades going broke every day, doing good
Every day.
work, but they can't afford to show up clean, sober, on time, dressed right, or use a checklist because they're not priced right and they're just doing it, doing it, doing it. As Michael Gerber says, they're stuck doing it, doing it, doing it, doing it, and never slow down long enough, like you said, to what is the vision? Who is our customer? Where do we want to be? What kind of services do we want to offer? That's quite mature thinking. And if you're super busy or higher level thinking, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you're still on the bottom of the pyramid, just trying to make payroll, you don't have time to think those thoughts. And for me, it came down to, Austin, I was so sick and tired of what we were doing, living the life we were, making no money, scraping by, waking up in the middle of the night, wondering if I was going to be able to make payroll, all that, that I was fine going out of business. And my mentor's telling me you have to quintuple your prices. And I'm like, great, I'm going to quintuple my prices and no one's going to call and I can put a fork in it. I've had it.
And
And so
they
what
called.
happened, well, you're always going to get complaints. I always say this too. Your mother or the church are going to be the worst ones. I guarantee you've got a horror story from one of those guys. And, you're always going to have someone who complains, but you can't price low enough. You probably didn't charge your mother or the church. You can't price low enough that you don't get a complaint now and then because we're in a problem based business. Do you think anybody ever wants to call you? They never want to call me. Clogged drains, bugs. Oh, yeah, let's spend the Saturday dealing with that. Or, come home. Nobody wants to call us. So the best we can do is be the hero, to take the pain away, assure people they've called the right place. And all of that is going to cost them, And is it worth it to them? Oh, Austin's expensive, but he's so worth it. Showed up clean, sober, on time, dressed right, and used a checklist. So when we raised our prices, we still got the occasional complaint. We just started making money and it happened so fast. I was in debt up to my eyeballs. A year later, we had stockpiled enough money that I turned to my husband and I say, okay, what do you want to do? I'm thinking, let's grow big. Let's get more trucks. Let's move into this market area. I'm getting pretty excited about growth. And my husband says, you know what? I like working all by myself. So that's why I wrote the other books, the business planning books, because money buys options. Money buys some breathing room. And it allowed me and you and a lot of other folks, if you have some money, you can just pause long enough to ask some bigger questions like, what do we want to do? Why do we want to do this? What's the point? And for my husband and I, for Hot Rod and I, we had different visions of the business. Now, when we were both on the hamster wheel, right, we didn't even have time for that conversation.
But couldn't even talk about it. Yeah,
couldn't even talk about it. It was just so painful all the time. And then we could take a couple breaths. And at first it was pretty upsetting, emotional. Like, wait, here's what it came down to. My husband didn't want to do what I wanted him to do. Think that's a recipe for disaster? I wanted him to be different. I wanted him to have my dream, and he didn't. And, as I look back on it now, it was the best thing. That's why we're probably still married. Like, give each other some space. If you and your dad aren't on the same page, you don't have to work together. What do you want? And that's what having some money allows you, is just the space to ask a bigger question. So that's why in my evolution as a business owner, I wrote the books on business planning. And they're just the questions. What do you want? Why do you want it? Who's going to work with you? Who are you going to work for? By when do you want to have something happen? And, what are a list of projects that'll move you in that direction? That's all business planning is. But you can't even ask those questions if you're just scratching out a living every day.
If you don't have money to put gas in the tank, if you don't have money to be able to make payroll, you're not thinking. You're on the very first level of, like you've said, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You don't even have the time. You don't even have the time to think.
No. And so when it comes to operations too, have you had Al Levy on your podcast?
I have. Yeah. He was introduced through a mutual friend. Oh my goodness. Al.
He's so good.
Wonderful. He is so good. He's
one of my best friends, and he was the original investor at Zoom Drain. And he, his whole life purpose is to get operations in place. His tagline is less stress and more success, but it's because, like hair on fire, his company used to operate like that, and he just no more. A lot of times,
and he has experiences too, Al does, in working with family, and how stressful and difficult that was until they figured a few things out.
And he's really our go-to operations guy. I mean, he really knows operations inside and out, and it's painstaking to write a manual. But he's the reason why Zoom Drain has this great foundation. He helped write our manuals, and we've really taken them to the nth degree. They're so good, but it allows us to then consider, now, what do we want? Do we want 40 million? Do we want 400 million? What will it take? Can we scale this thing? That's the same game you're playing right now.
It's the same game we're playing. And I think it's the same game that everyone's playing if they want to play in that game.
If they want to grow like that.
If they want to grow, I love that you said that, with you and Hot Rod, that isn't what he wanted to do. When you guys started stockpiling cash after you raised prices a year later, it gave you the chance to be able to have that conversation to say, are we taking this to the moon? Which is kind of what your attitude seemed to have been. And Hot Rods was like, I'm pretty good.
I'm good. But it's interesting. So he went off and worked on his own, and terrible wife that I am, was kind of hoping it'd fail. Like I would be more important, and he would kind of, but it's just all that immature stuff, because he was fine, but he was premium priced. So he really became, and there's a lot of room in the trades. If as I'm talking, you're thinking, I really don't want to grow the company. You can do whatever you want, but money buys options. And his overall mission statement for his company, when he started one on his own without me, was to work for people he liked on projects that are interesting, and get in line. It was like the West Coast chopper model. He did radiant floor heat. He did these really beautiful, unique custom systems. And, if he's busy, he's not going to call you back. I mean, stuff that would I would just like
make you cringe, right?
Yes, but it worked.
He was booked out for years or months. And
he was happy.
Yeah.
That's the thing I think that is that's what I love so much about business, about the trades. What do you want? It's a big question. And whenever I see owners who are fussing with each other, brothers or just partners, father, son. Like you can write out your perfect life, you can compare notes. And if you're not on the same page, you don't have to do this. There are other options. Your business is like a car. It's not you. And that's tough because a lot of people identify so deeply with their business. But the
Yeah.
business fails, it doesn't make you worse, less as in any way. And a lot of business owners I know have a lot of failure in their path
Yep.
and they just try something else or try and bat 51%. That's a good game. But if you were willing to fix the car, or you could abandon the car or add another car, or buy a car, a second car. Those are things you can do with businesses if we're willing to have a little lighter touch on it. My friend Howard Partridge, also a great podcast guest, he says that your business exists for one reason only, and that's to drive you in the direction of your dreams, of your life dreams. It's a tool, it's a vehicle. And then it gets a lot easier to lighten up, make better decisions, see with broader vision, right? And a business gets to be a really fun game. I see that you use the words game too. You like the game of business.
It's a game. It
It's a game.
absolutely is. And I don't mean to make light of something that's
Mm-mm.
serious and that's putting food on the table and paying the rent or paying the mortgage. But I think that if we take ourselves a little less seriously sometimes and look at it as a game, how can we do a little bit more? How can we be a little bit more efficient? How can we have a little bit more fun? It becomes a little lighter, and this difficult
Mm-hmm.
journey that we're all on, life becomes a little bit more fun and a little bit more rewarding. And to know that we are all in control of where it is we want to go. Using the analogy of a boat or a bus, we might all have different roles, and we all sometimes may have different dreams, and we ought to get off one boat and get onto the next boat. But we can make things a little bit lighter and a little bit more fun. And this has been so fun. Speaking of fun, having this
Ah,
conversation and doing this with you, Ellen, it's been just fantastic. I love that we were able to talk about money and getting that right. And, then after that, just having some of our operational excellence be able to shine through after we've determined who it is we want to be in the marketplace. As we round this out in the next minute or so, what parting comments or what advice do you have for either business owners or those that are inside of companies right now? What advice would you have for them as they take on the next year or the next challenge as it relates to their businesses or some of their goals?
well, as you kind of prepped me at the beginning of the call, like what's ripped from the headlines, and I said, well, I always like talking about money, and we got to do that because that really forms the foundation, and then you start putting these systems in place. Um, Ultimately, the game is won by the people, and creating relationships with team members. I think that COVID and just a new generation of people in the workforce are more selective about what they want from a job. It's not a matter of just telling people what to do and complaining about them. I hate it when people trash talk kids or their employees or whatever. I'm really
Sure.
finding, and that might be a springboard to another podcast. But the people, getting people to magnetizing people, recruiting people, hiring, orienting, training, retaining. That's what I'll call it. That train that keeps going is so important. We now have a professional recruiter, 2 full-time people at Zoom Drain who are working with us. I mean, we wouldn't have thought of that a year ago, even a year ago. It
Wow.
didn't dawn on us, but they're helping us, get systems in place for our franchisees as well as recruit team members for our company locations. And that's the game is being able to magnetize right stuff people and provide careers, not just jobs. That's really what obsesses me right this hot minute.
Well, and as you grow, you're able to create more of those opportunities. Like you said, 2 years ago, a year ago, you weren't even thinking about having not just one, but two full-time recruiters. What you're doing as an entrepreneur is creating a vehicle for other people to go after their dreams and to achieve
Yeah.
their goals. And that is just such a special thing. And we do have to do another session. I would love to
Yes.
have you on again. I would love to have you on
Yay.
again.
You are the
Um,
best. Thank you,
yeah,
Austin. I appreciate
no,
you. I feel like you're a kindred spirit, man.
agreed. Ellen, thank you so much for being on. Thank you, everybody who is listening. These drop every Thursday. Subscribe, listen. We always have great guests on. Today was an exceptionally great guest, and I so appreciate Ellen, you, and everyone for tuning in. Until next time, we'll catch you next Thursday.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.